I don't know if you want to say a bit more about yourself, yeah, but I think most interesting is also for you, what is the core of the mobility as a service concept? Yeah, what is most important?
Maybe this tells a bit about the background, what the concept of MaaS for me is. For me, it started as a prediction of what will happen with the digital disruption within mobility. It kind of like, okay, if I have to think that what would be the obvious outcomes, where would we land after disruption? In a way, first think about it this way, that it's a bit naive to think that no digital disruption will ever happen in mobility. We will remain as it is. And if we believe that, well, that's not the case, there will be a disruption and it's actually ongoing. And the question only is, well, what will happen when it's more or less mature? For me, the prediction was pretty obvious. I come from Finland, and a long time ago we were very good in these mobile phones, and we saw kind of how the disruption happened within them. I mean, you do not notice the same business as it was in the 80s. What telecom looked like and what it looks like now is completely different. But I think the analogy is very obvious. The Nokias and Samsungs and others, they're connecting people, virtually. We do it physically. And it was obvious to try to look at and mimic kind of when you talk about disruption. The first thing is, there is no point of, you have no data because it hasn't happened yet. So you have to kind of look at analogies from other sectors. And I thought that more or less telecom would be an obvious one. So just looking at how would it look like, and it's pretty obvious there. You have the infrastructure layer, the masts and everything, all the networks. Then you have the devices, which are these, and then you have the operators. With us, you have infrastructure, roads, networks, rails, and everything. And then you have the devices, cars and buses and trains and scooters and what have you. But what is missing is the operator. And to me, it was more obvious that, hey, well, this is going to happen, and now it's more about how do we steer this disruption.
What would you see as the main opportunities for the users? What are the main challenges you had in the context of making this happen?
Well, for the users, I kind of think of it this way, that more or less we in the field of mobility, we're a bit arrogant in reality towards the end users. We kind of think of the end users only from the perspective of what do I have to offer. So first, I look at my trains, my buses, my whatever, and within that, I will see that it's good for the user. We don't really think that much of the life of the end user. So in many ways, I would say that mobility is actually process terms. We are a supporting process that wants to define itself as a main process. For the user, let's face it, they don't really care about mobility. They care about the destinations. They just want to go to those places conveniently, easily, of course, with as much style and everything as possible. But otherwise, that's what it is. We just think that it's all about mobility, but it's really not. And this is kind of the issue, and I suppose the biggest paradigm and the problem that we have within the industry, because we don't really think about the end user outside of the one thing, and that is the car ownership. It is very good service. It's very expensive, very underused. So you buy a lot of capacity, but it's very good one. It's the only one that gives for the user what we really want with freedom. With freedom, we want a guarantee that I can go anywhere, anytime on a whim, just like that. And this brings me to what was the biggest problem. Back in 2015, when I founded MaaS Global, I knew that almost certainly it's way too early for the markets. Having said that, if it wasn't for Alta Vistas and Netscapes, maybe Google wouldn't have been there. And this is with everything. Somebody just has to do it. And I suppose with this one also, it's the kind of mission and what we're supposed to accomplish is so big that the risk doesn't make sense. You're going to be the first one, you're going to suffer, but then you do it. What's the biggest issue, I suppose, has to do with these definitions. Everybody defines their market as here's the ride-hailing market, the train market, the this and this market. You might go a bit from that, but you don't really define yourself in the market of freedom, which is what actually the end user is buying. They are buying their freedom. They're not buying your train or your ride or whatever. They're buying their freedom, and nothing other than owning a car actually can bring you the full freedom. And now, because of this definition problem, we should be looking at it from the perspective that, okay, all the services and competing against car ownership, which is by far still the best out there, and no doubt about it. And how do we get those services together? But we're not there yet. So it's these whole silos of everyone that is kind of blocking the end users from getting services that they actually deserve.
How do you see the opportunities which could be provided in the context of mobility as a service with respect to autonomous mobility? Do you think that could be a game changer, making this even more attractive, or do you see it quite in a neutral way?
How I've always seen it, what happens with the automated vehicles is that's kind of that's the end of the era of car ownership. Uh, think about it this way: why would you have something sitting when, with much less, you have a guarantee of a car coming to your door at any given time? And it would be very weird that people would be owning so many vehicles themselves. It would be fleets that actually come together. So for me, that's the ultimate time when MaaS is a reality. Now, um, I I would refer to actually already passed away great colleague of ours, Catherine Kargas, who said that for the world, it's important that MaaS happens before the AVs really are a reality. The reason is quite simple. For cities, let's think about it from the end user perspective. The AVs are out there and people are using them frequently. The best thing out there for the first 5%, which are the well paying ones, is that you have this service where a robo taxi will pick you up easily like that, will take you door to door. You don't have to worry about, you can have a drink, you can do whatever. Within a couple of minutes, you just push a button, car's there and will take you to your destination. Perfect, isn't it? Sounds like a really perfect world for the user. The problem of this is that the more users we start getting, the more trouble we start getting, and also the ITF simulations that this will cause roughly about double the traffic as we have today, and we all understand that that's completely undoable. We cannot sustain that kind of cities, even with the AVs and even with the parking space that would be saved by that. So the big question for the AVs is that how will they be okay that those bots will take them to a metro station or train station or something, or a bus stop, or into a larger vehicle that is then shared one way or another? How do we get that going? Because the user case itself does not support it. And this really means that if we would have people well equipped and using multiple modes seamlessly, and they have been using that for 5 years already, then the AVs will fit into this kind of environment much better. Because also the AVs, we think of them wrong as that they would be cars. They are not going to be cars if you think about it this way. We spend about 90 minutes in transport every day, one way or another. So I can get that time back to me. So we're now we're okay that time is wasted. So we're just in traffic. because we want to go to places. But if it's an AV that comes to me, I want it to be my movie theater, my office, my gym, my bar, my restaurant, whatever. So it will not be a car that picks you up. It will be you continuing your favorite movie. It will be you continuing your work. It will be these and these things within the car. And that's just a moving office or a moving gym as such. But the problem of this is that the UX of you sitting alone in that box is easy to make it much better than anything where you have to do interchange. That's why I think that cities are actually facing a big challenge now in creating this really intermodal experience that people will love.
But when you now say that the cities face this challenge, are you implying that the cities are the main drivers of mobility as a service? I mean, it's quite a complex ecosystem which we have in front of us to make it really happen. I mean, are the main drivers the cities? Are the main drivers the operators of the service? Are the main drivers the vehicle manufacturers? I mean, who are the main drivers?
Yes and no for the cities. Let's look at another paradigm shift that happened. So you can look at the success cases and try to learn from them. The car. The car is, it's no doubt that it's a success story. One way or another, it's gone throughout the world, and that's how it's done. Now, let's think about it in the 20s. If the cities would not have started building roads, so that when you buy a car, there's always a guarantee that you can go to any address with it, you can drive to any address, it would not have been a success story. So more or less, yes, the cities actually paved the way for cars to become successful. Having said that, if Ford would have said that, hey, cities are important in this, so why don't we wait for Detroit to give a tender that who will be the provider of cars for all the citizens of Detroit? It would have been city provided service, cars, and now we would be facing a thing where every city goes through a tendering phase every 5 years of which is the car that is provided to our citizens every year. It would not have been a success story. So the thing is, the cities paved the way for the infrastructure so that it's very easy and makes all the sense in the world to buy a car. Had it not been for private companies actually providing the consumer service, in this case the car, it would never have been a successful one. So it is this kind of collaborative game that has to be there. I mean, the cities will have to create the infrastructure for MaaS, create the market regulation, create all of this, be the referees in the field, but nobody likes to see a referee play the game. That's not the thing. So it kind of has to be both ways.
I mean, when I talk to people also from the industry about mobility as a service, I think everybody agrees it's a great concept. Yeah, it's good for the environment. It increases sustainability of transport. So I think the community is fully behind it. But what I hear again and again is that people say, is there really a business case in it? Yeah, can it be commercially successful? And a short while ago, what I did is I asked ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT about the future commercial potential in the context of automotive technology and in the context of mobility services. And to my surprise, the answer concerning mobility services was that one of the challenges of mobility services are the low margins. The low profit margins. Would you agree to this in the future? Or is it today already the case? Do you agree that it might be the case also in the future? How do you see this?
Yes and no. It's definitely an extremely hard concept to make money out of. It's pretty obvious that this is what consumers want, and to me, it tends to be that at some point consumers tend to get whatever they want. That's just the way that life goes. For the business case itself, it's also very hard to do. it's a bit like, you remember back a long time ago, big boom about the .coms and something like Google with searches that will never ever make any money. And it will not, like Google Maps and others. It will not until you make it big enough. So in any case, and I have done, of course, our business case, and I've helped a number of MaaS players around the world, and anything points to the same thing. It's an operator business, and just like in telecom, do not make operator business with small numbers. You need a critical mass, and so far, no one has been there with a big enough mass to actually go into the markets where you have above 5% of the eligible population, and then you can really start running the levers of profitability. And that's the problem. We are making judgments or all kinds of things with very little data, actually no valid data whatsoever. I know, because we've been furthest in with MaaS Global in the markets, and we weren't even near to going to those points where we knew that, okay, this can be profitable. Now, having said that, we made a lot of assumptions, and just about every one of those assumptions of what are the profitability drivers came through. So it is actually possible to make it profitable, but not if you do it too small. And that's the problem. So for everything to get started, like almost any new concept, it's waiting for the first one to get hundreds of millions to actually make it in the markets. Now, the answer of ChatGPT doesn't come up with anything new. It's repeating what people say, and that's what people keep on saying from any new thing when they don't really understand where the margins come from. So it's easy to say it's a low margin thing when you haven't tried it. So it's easy to analyze when you haven't actually done anything. And I suppose the biggest problem of all this is that people uh, do not comprehend anything else than it's just running on commissions. It would be very silly to think that you only run the business on commissions. I mean, the commissions in this world, the retail market of mobility has improved, and you can even today, when I started this 2016, 2015, no chance that you could run a business with commissions. Now the understanding of what is the value of a retail market, it starts to be there, and you can even make a business case out of just the commissions. But it's not the best way for these services, because you need to understand what the value add of MaaS is, and that I know actually that people are willing to pay for. It's the convenience of all in one. It's playing with pricing of multimodality, and it's plugging it with other businesses as well. So definitely not the world's most simplest way of making money, but there are good enough business cases in it. The sad
And
thing is,
and
you do it by
mm,
10,000, and then you say, now we're going to make a lot of money.
and who is actually paying for it? Is it only the end user, or is there also a willingness to pay, for instance, by cities or other stakeholders?
Um, if we see it this way, who are we creating value to? There's definitely the end users. There's definitely value for the cities that these kinds of services, that there is an option for car ownership, or there's convenience model. We all know that there's a lot of impact on those things. Now, there's also value for different companies that that can have easy access. There's for those that have a lot of employees, but it's very hard to try to bring all of these values into the same service. It tends to be, we're a bit silly that way, that either a service is funded fully by public money or fully private, and this is very silly to me. Misuse of money, that then we have these competing. The other one is with tax money, the other one is fully with private money, and it makes no sense. But we haven't found a model yet, except for the model in Italy, Milan, Turin, and Rome, where you can actually incentivize and do it this way. It is weird to me, because if we see other types of evolutions in mobility, the electric car, the electric vehicle, there was never any doubt, will the cities be providers of electric vehicles, and will they start doing it this way? But they wanted electric vehicles, so governments and cities tried to find incentives that would make it easier to come to the markets, easier for the consumers to come in. But in the world of MaaS, a lot of discussion, very little actual actions outside of Italy, which is I'm really eager to see how that starts working.
And in which cities did you implement MaaS successfully?
Helsinki, of course, being the oldest one, I would say that's where it's even market-wise we were able to find the segments that are profitable. For the others, successfully, but only the first phases of it, and those would be West Midlands or Birmingham, Antwerp, Vienna to some extent. I'm really proud of the Swiss implementation, because in Switzerland it was the whole public transport was the whole Switzerland whatsoever. The biggest success in user numbers was actually in Brazil. In few of the major cities, we got in 3 months to about 1 million paying users, which is very, very good outcome. Japan, there were some more or less services with very good trials. I suppose the best one over there was combining mobility with your rent, and that was I would say a very, very interesting one. Quite limited, but good outcomes. I might be missing some areas, and then of course Italy.
I mean, you referred already to the challenge that you need a certain scale to be profitable. Are there certain actions which are needed maybe to improve the scalability of MaaS? Is there something at the moment lacking, maybe in the context of standardization or any other activities? Yeah, because I think that became quite clear in our conversation so far, that scale is really maybe the most important topic.
It is. I would divide this into two parts. First, which we had to tackle for the first 3-4 years with a lot of effort and very little outcome, was getting the supply. MaaS is unlike many other businesses. It's very hard to do so that you're on top of the whole supply yourself. Means that you have to partner, which means you have to integrate, you have to do all of these things. And that's a very volatile field, because the actions of a public transport monopoly in a city, to the big ride-hailing companies, local taxis, micromobility players, car rentals, car shares and such, they work with very different ideas and very different things. Now, roughly about 2019, it started to be a bit easier. But in order to lower the entry barrier, which is in reality means the amount of investment that you need to put in, it would be easier to standardize. But when we talk standardized, we leave it a bit too low. And I heard the Commission's big talks about standardizing will happen somewhere when it's anyways too late. Standardizing technology is not enough, and I've seen that in many markets. It's also standardizing what would be called FRAND, some fair, reasonable, non-discriminatory contracts, because we all know that in the industry there's a elephant that's in the room, which is that there's a lot of power games. And those that, for example, have monopolies or dominance in one mode or further, they are very keen on utilizing also their dominance in it. And unless you have certainty of a fair, reasonable, non-discriminatory contract and actual definition of what that is, it's very hard to do the integrations. So supply needs to be out there, and it needs to be, because for many the investment barrier of I don't even want to get started with that. So let's assume for the fun of it that the great transport system of Europe would be open and easily pluggable, like IO as a standard, and you can start doing all kinds of development on top of it. Then we come to the markets. So how would you lower the entry barrier that there's certainty that you can actually get into the markets? And one of the biggest problems for us is, and I can take Vienna. We invested a lot of money into Vienna, and then all of a sudden, because they said that we want open competitive markets, and then next year new politics and they say, no, actually we want all of you out of here and we want to do this under public monopoly, and we will put money into that. So kind of the investment is wasted into the markets. How would that happen? Well, first of all, define that these are the markets we are going to do, and that you do not have to fear continuous public competition. Public competition will not win this because of lack of scalability and the need for investment and such. But it can slow the investments into the markets, and you can do a lot of trouble there. And then it's incentivizing. I can guarantee that one simple decision within Europe, within at least EU, would boost the whole market of MaaS for next years, and there would be a lot of investment, a lot of new services coming in. And it's a very simple one. If EU-wide we would actually make this decision, not just talk about it, that you have leasing cars here and you have mobility benefit here, and we would make it extremely easy and incentivize tax-wise the mobility service, and immediately we would start a burst of all kinds of services coming in.
You mentioned already earlier in this conversation that automated vehicles will have an impact, on the individual car ownership. And I know that you also had lots of conversations with car manufacturers on the topic of mobility as a service. Do you ultimately see this topic as a threat to car manufacturers, or do you see it more as an opportunity? And if you see it as an opportunity, what would you advise car manufacturers or the suppliers of automotive technology to do to enter this market successfully?
Let's make a couple of assumptions. Let's make the assumption that MaaS is one way or another, however we define it, will be more and more the future of people. So what will be then happening in disruption is the ownership will be more and more in decline, which is already happening one way or another. Now, any kind of change in the market means that it's redistribution of the market. So there will be those that benefit from this, and there will be those that are actually being killed by these kind of changes. This is normal market behavior. How I would like to look at it is from the point of view of ARPU. I learned this from telecom industry, and I think it's very important. So average revenue per user. So how much do people spend in mobility on a monthly basis? It's around 20% of our all costs will go into mobility. At the moment, 76% of that is in the car. And now when we talk about mobility as a service, there's a lot of those that think it's all about public transport, but actually it is not at all. The biggest value still, and in any of those packages that we have been creating, the car holds by far the most value in it, and will keep on doing that for a long time, because anything else there is hard to justify as other than utility. I mean, if you look at Ubers and others, they're just cheaper taxi. The added value is very little in such, whereas car has been dominating, with luxury cars and all of this. And still the biggest value, even in the world of MaaS, is in beautiful cars. I mean, when you ask people what are they willing to pay for, is the best MaaS is a solution where you have access to all the beautiful cars without the hassle of ownership. And yes, the other modes as well. But if you think of MaaS as a buffet table, the beautiful cars are the meat and the shrimp and the fish in it, whereas the other modes are potato and rice. So as a buffet entrepreneur, I want you to eat a lot of potato, but of course, what I put into the poster is the jumbo shrimps and beef and all of these things. And it doesn't sell without the beef as well. And beef is the car. Now, if you're a car manufacturer, still people are willing to pay most of their money in this mobility world to the cars. but they're not so keen on the ownership anymore. So how do you get that going? Is by making it very easily available, so that you have very easy packages of use these beautiful cars whenever needed, and use other modes just as well. In a way, the best way of making even money in MaaS is that you sell the access to Ferrari, but you put people in buses. And personally, I think it's much more valuable for the whole MaaS market, for the actual the whole change that's oncoming, that we come up with what's the Tesla of mobility, rather than trying to come what's the low end and very rational MaaS, because that doesn't sell. We always forget this. This has to sell.
I mean, we spoke already about the scalability of MaaS, and you said that this is very important, and you explained it very well. How do you see the future of mobility service in the context of competition? Do you think that there will be quite a few suppliers of mobility as a service? Do you think it will be oligopolistic, that we have only maybe 5 to 10 suppliers worldwide? Or do you see that it becomes more almost monopolistic, that we might have only 3 to 5? What do you see in the future in this respect?
Well, all of these scenarios are actually possible. We now are in a phase that, especially in Europe, with smart governance, we can create a really lively market with low entry barriers, that in all fields of MaaS you can actually come up with local innovations and all kinds of innovations that it's a thriving market. But that needs actual actions, not just these discussions and what have you. In many ways, Europe is just sitting at the moment and thinking of just regulation that will ban some things or such. This to me, kind of a multiple player, vibrant market will need some governance. The other way will be more or less, I don't think that it will be one to rule them all, because mobility is so big field that big investment will find a competitor in for any of the players. I mean, if you think of Google or anything like that, the ARPU of those services is some tens of cents per month, whereas ARPU in mobility is hundreds of euros a month. So there will be competition. Now, at the moment, because the investment market or the capital market is quite kind of stagnant, there's not much going on. Nobody takes huge risks in new concepts. The natural evolution goes towards those that are very strong globally in one or two modes. And well, we can think of those. Those are the ones that have ride hailing or something similar, and they will expand this. But it will be a walled garden naturally. They are more keen on they have a lot invested into the supply, and they want to hold on to it as such, which is a natural one. And I think at the moment that would be the natural evolution of MaaS. Whether it's a wanted kind of development or not, that remains to be seen. But this would lead more or less to let's say a rule of maybe 5 players globally that have you kind of leverage your dominance in one or two modes and expand that to MaaS, so that you're dominant in such fields. It can be a good evolution done properly. Probably the public transport players are not going to be very strong in this game.
I would like to close with what might be the most important question. I know that you have done many pitches to cities to convince them of the usefulness of mobility service, really to transform the mobility experience of their citizens, and also to increase the sustainability of mobility in the city. If I would give you the opportunity now in 2 minutes to make a pitch, what would you say to a city authority leader?
I would put it this way. Look, today the users are actually in your favor. The they are wanting and demanding more solutions rather than owning a car at the moment. This more or less gives cities a new chance of actually reclaiming how mobility, which is the skeleton of any city, is defined. But it doesn't come by just sitting around and doing a bit of bans here and there. Taking on an active role in creating a market which actually functions in the benefit of the citizen, the benefit of the city, but also in the benefit of the market makes all the sense. But this really needs an active role in it.
Thank you very much, Sampo Hietanen, for this interview. And I wish you all the best in the future. And I think it was very inspiring for all of us to see what happened so far concerning mobility as a service and what hopefully will happen in the future, because I think this topic has a huge potential to make mobility more sustainable, maybe also a bit safer, maybe also affordable, and for sure also more inclusive.
Thank you.